All right, it is time to get started. So without further ado, welcome to Tech-Powered Learning, aligning technology with learning objectives. Now, if you haven't joined us before, get ready for a fast-paced 30-minute webinar. So my name is Mandy Green, and I work with all things professional development, training, and instructional design at GW or Goodheart-Willcox. If you haven't been here before, also know that we will use our smartphones or smart devices to scan QR codes, and I will be putting links in the chat as well, since this is a highly interactive session and really relies on participation to be successful. So with that, are you ready? Okay, good. Here we go. So first, ponder this thought. How can technology impact student engagement? All right, have you thought about it? Let's go through some questions on our poll. So I'll be launching a poll that will show up on your screen momentarily. It's going to have 5 questions. So the first question, which you should see on your screen, is, can technology be used to personalize student experiences? Select yes or no. All right, next one. Can technology make it easier for students to collaborate with each other? Yes or no? Next one. Can technology help students access educational resources they might not otherwise be able to access? Yes or no? The fourth question, can technology be used to create more engaging and interactive learning experiences? Yes or no? And the last question, can technology help students develop critical thinking and problem-solving skills? Yes or no? All right, have you had a moment to ponder those? Let's go through the results. Just a second, my screen's having a slow moment. There we go. So as we pondered those ideas about student engagement, about technology, we're looking at aligning objectives or outcomes with technology. So let's first build a framework of understanding. So with that, let's look at the ISTE standards. So if you're not familiar with ISTE, they do have standards for educators and standards for students. So when we first look at the student one, we'll notice some things. There are 7 student standards. And this framework from ISTE is really talking about integrating technology effectively for education. So it's trying to provide a broad, clear guidelines for students and educators so as we leverage technology to enhance our learning experiences. So as you can see for students, we're looking at empowered learners, digital citizen, knowledge constructor, innovative designer, computational thinker, creative communicator, and global collaborator. Are you familiar with the ISTE standards? If you are, share this in the chat. Let's go to the next one. How about those educator standards? The ISTE standards for educators, for us as educators, it wants us to be learners, leaders, citizens, collaborator, designer, facilitator, and analyst. Have you thought of your role as a teacher in those terms before? Okay, let's think about this and collaborate together to kind of think about it in terms of our own classroom. So grab that trusty smart device, open the camera app, and scan the QR code on the page or the slide. When you do that, it's going to take you to a Padlet. Padlet is a free ed tech tool. I'm using the free version, but as always, check with your organization's IT department to make sure that you can use it with students and it's open for student use. So when you open the Padlet, it's going to have the different ISTE student standards. How do these standards show up in your classroom? Let's jump to our Padlet to find out. And I'll be putting the link in there momentarily. All right, so as you can see, we have columns at the top with the different student ISTE standards. Then you'll click the plus sign and add how that standard shows up in your classroom. If you have trouble getting there, please let me know in the chat so that we can get it resolved quickly. Oh, sorry about that. It just jumped back. And so you might not have one for every ISTE student standard. You might want to jump down to computational thinking if that fits more readily for you, or creative communicator. So as you can see with ISTE, there are some little bugs or aliens at the top. That's letting me know that people are collaborating right now. They're accessing the Padlet. And so we should start to see some more ideas pop up in the Padlet. For example, under empowered learner, how does that show up in our classrooms? For some, it shows up as students reflecting on learning, right? Having choice in assignments. For digital citizen, that shows up as our students being cognizant of their digital footprint and hopefully managing that digital footprint. Oops, I don't know what's happened there. How does knowledge constructor show up for you? For some, it shows up as students evaluating that digital content and its validity. So when our students are working and researching content, are they evaluating the content? How does innovative designer show up? Sometimes that's having our students select the right digital tool for the project. Maybe that's a Google slide. Maybe that's a Canva project. How does computational thinker show up for our students? Are they using technology to gather data and to analyze it? What about creative communicator? Are our students using those digital tools to communicate visually? I think about this a lot with our graphic communications teams. Also, global collaborator. How are our students taking their knowledge and sharing it globally? Are they being contributors to team projects? As you can see, there's lots of ways that this starts to show up in our classroom. I'm going to jump back to the slide deck. Let's keep going. Also, let's now transition to the educator. So we looked at some of the student standards and some ways that they might show up in our classroom. Let's look at the educator. So 3 of the educator standards were learner, designer, and facilitator. These 3 directly support technology integration. How do they do that? So if we look at the learner, that standard is really focusing on the importance of the educator being a lifelong learner who continually seeks to improve their technology skills and knowledge. When we look at designer, this is when we're focusing on creating engaging and effective learning experiences, right? So are we leveraging technology to design personalized, differentiated instruction? Are we trying to create those innovative learning environments? Are we doing things like interactive content, simulations, assessments, etc.? And then the facilitator one, this one highlights us as educators when we're guides and mentors. Are we effective facilitators using technology to foster collaboration, to foster critical thinking and problem solving? Are we trying to create opportunities for students to use technology to explore and create and share their learning? So these are the technology standards from ISTE for us educators that relate to tech integration. So hopefully now we kind of have a baseline of technology integration standards for students. for educators. Let's layer on the next layer. Let's apply it to a CTE field. I just chose auto tech. So here's an example, what it might look like. And tell me if it looks like this for you or not. So if you're an auto instructor, you might have an objective that looks something like this. Students will be able to diagnose engine performance using diagnostic tools and data analysis. That's our learning objective that we want to align with our technology integration piece. So if I look at that objective and I think what skills are needed for students to achieve that objective or that outcome, things like critical thinking, problem solving, and decision making. Then, if I take those skills that I know as an expert educator that are in that standard or objective, and I think of the ISTE standards, I'm thinking of knowledge creator, because students are having to curate a variety of information from sources, solve problems. I'm thinking computational thinker, because they're having to develop and employ effective computational thinking to analyze, solve problems, design solutions for this diagnosis of engine performance issue, and probably a little bit of innovative designer, because they're diagnosing, identifying those problems and thinking of new innovative solutions. So these standards really emphasize the importance of higher order thinking skills, which are essential for critical thinking, problem solving, and decision making. Let's see what's next. So if we take that standard a little more and we think about it in terms of, okay, so we have the standard, we have some of those skills, and we've aligned it with the ISTE technology, so we know what kind of technology we're looking for. What are our students going to be demonstrating in our classroom, right? They're going to connect the scanner to look for vehicle performance issues. They're going to access the DTCs and the live data parameters. They're going to analyze that data. They're probably going to use some type of diagnostic software in today's society in the 21st century. And they're going to have to make some kind of decision-making process or decision tree when selecting the appropriate repair. So what does that look like then when we integrate that into our curriculum and we start to bring technology into our classroom? It could look like using those diagnostic tools and the software in our lab activities. So whether that's in the lab or like a classroom setting, you're going to bring some type of tool in probably. Also, it could be looking like troubleshooting simulated problems, using simulations in the classroom. And then finally, they're going to have to research and analyze data from some real world automotive performance issue here. So we're looking at them researching that and then having to give that information back. What tech tools are they going to then use to share the diagnosis and the solution or repair? Okay, that was a long-winded example. We're going to run through a little bit shorter one, and then it's going to be your turn to think about this. So here's another one. So let's say I'm a health science teacher. So here's an anatomy and physiology learning objective, right? It says, investigate the interconnection between the skeletal, muscular, nervous, and circulatory systems. So then I think, okay, so what is that asking my students to do? And I think about it from that in the lens of that ISTE educator standard. That's going to be knowledge constructor, right? They're going to have to evaluate information. They're going to have to curate information from digital sources using a variety of tools. And then they're probably going to have to explain or show that in some real world manner. So then I think, okay, what technology tools can I use to address that learning objective? This one for anatomy and physiology, we could do virtual dissections. We could even use medical databases to help us curate some of that basic content and ideas and knowledge. Okay, are you ready for your shot? And I did see the question in the chat. Yes, this is recorded, and I will show you where it's going to live as soon as we're done with the webinar today. All right, so here's your chance, and I would love for you to share your ideas in the chat. Remembering that this is professional development, we are learning with and from each other. We all have really great ideas to share. So think about your content area or one course that you teach if you teach multiple. Think of a learning outcome or objective. And if you want to type it in the chat, type it in the chat. We would love to see that. If not, grab a piece of paper or open a new window on your computer and just type out a learning objective that you have? I'll give you just a second to do that. Okay, so you have a learning objective in mind, yes? Or you've written it down or you're typing it in the chat as we speak to share with others. Awesome. Next, evaluate that objective. What skills are needed in that objective? And what ISTE student standard do they align with? Are we asking our students to be knowledge constructors? Are we asking them to be global collaborators in that standard or learning objective? Are we asking them to be creative communicators? Awesome. Looks like Claire's talking about welding. Awesome. So with welding, probably the different types of welds that they could possibly do. Maybe even it's a safety learning objective with, the first of the semester. Yeah, and Mary talking about how to explain different organ systems work together to maintain homeostasis. Exactly. So you have your learning objectives. And Shelley, how to interpret an ECG waveform. Absolutely. And so now you're thinking about which ISTE student standards align with that outcome, because that's going to lead us to the technology to help align technology and learning outcomes together. Exactly. And so there are 7 student ISTE standards that you can select from that might align with your learning objective or outcome. And so once you have your ISTE standard, then that's also going to help you decide what technology integration you might use. Are you going to look for something that's like a simulation? Are you going to use something more collaborative like a Google Doc, a Google slide presentation to have them present? Are your students going to be using some type of social media to share their final product with a wider audience, to be global collaborators? What tools are you going to use then to address your learning objective? And I will say, we are talking in broad terms today of simulations, of using a variety of tools to collaborate. If you want some more specific ideas, join us next week where we're going to identify specific tech tools. Yeah, exactly, Mary. Thanks for sharing. Mary, Shelley, Clarence, thanks so much for sharing. So hopefully you now have an idea of thinking about your learning objective or outcome, thinking about it in terms of that ISTE standard so that we can provide a framework for selecting the best technology integration tool to help engage students as we're covering those learning objectives. And I realize this may take some time to think about in this lens. The funny thing is, you're probably already doing a lot of this. Us as educators do so many amazing, great things. We just don't always think about exactly what we're doing. So I am quite sure you're already doing this. Hopefully we just added a new lens or some new words to describe what we're doing. All right. So now I want to know, what is your point of most significance? So we're going to launch another poll. Hopefully it'll show up on your screen. Sometimes these polls are a little finicky. So when I get there, I'm going to click on the poll. It's going to ask for what is your point of most significance today. So what is something that stuck out to you today? And let's see, I just launched it. So hopefully it's going to be in that chat. And if you cannot see it, it did not pop up on your screen, please let me know so that we can get it fixed quickly. All you're going to do is type in your response next to the submit button. It's also in the chat. You can just type it in where it says put your answer here. And please type in that box, what is something that stuck out to you in these prior 21 minutes? And when you do, it'll start to pop up on your screen, hopefully, so that you can see the response. And I've seen even in the chat, yeah, all 6 ISTE standards, absolutely. ISTE standards is coming in hot. I'm seeing a lot of ISTE standards. I'm seeing people like the ISTE standards in the poll. So that seems to be the point of most significance for most participants today. And hopefully those ISTE standards will just provide you an additional framework or lens to look at the work that we're already doing in the classroom with your students. All right, yep, ISTE standards still looks like that is the point of most significance for today. And you can actually just go to the ISTE standards, Google them, and they will pop up there for you. I do have some more resources to share with you as we start to wrap up. So hopefully the ISTE standards will help provide a framework for you to look at the work that you're doing and to realize that you're already doing really great results. I'm going to close all of our polls for today. It's always nice when people participate, so thank you so much for doing that. And let's jump back into our slide deck and wrap this up for today. So, like I said a while ago, if this was opening a new idea or thoughts or conversation for you to have about aligning learning objectives or outcomes and your technology tools in your classroom, join us next week. We're going to take this same student engagement idea with the ISTE standards, and we're now going to look at specific ed tech tools. So if you want some specific ed tech tools, scan that QR code and join us next week, where we will dive into more specifics for that. I'm also going to put the link in the chat for you right now. So if you don't want to scan the QR code, the link is in the chat for you as soon as my chat comes back up. Oops, and that did not copy well. Let me try that again. Technology, you know. All right, one more time. So hopefully you can scan that. You can join us. If not, I will show you where this is going to live in just a moment as well. The next one. So for attending today, you will receive a certificate of attendance, just stating that you were here. It is blank. You just fill in your name. The rest of it's filled in for you. And you can access that attendance certificate by scanning that QR code. Also, if you have the window open for this meeting, you'll notice at the top, there should be a button that says File. And in that file, you will find a document that has all of these links for you as well. So that is your certificate of attendance for today. Next, access to the recording. So there have been some difficulties with people receiving the recording through Microsoft Teams. So we want to make sure that you can access this when you need it. You can scan that QR code. It will take you to the Goodheart-Willcox YouTube playlist, where we house all of our office hour webinars. So while you're there, click on the subscribe button, and that way you'll be notified when new content is added to the playlist. So like I said, all of these, they should be emailed to you, but they may not. So find them on our playlist on that screen. Then at GW, we love feedback. So scan the QR code, tell us what you liked. You can tell us what you didn't like. Also, if you liked a certain activity or instructional strategy we used, like the Padlet, like the point of most significance, tell us that, and we'll add it to more PDs that we do. If you didn't like a certain activity, let us know, and we'll take it out. But we love feedback, and we evaluate this after every professional development session, so we love that. And then last but not least, in the file section of this webinar, in the window that you're in, you will have a document that has access to everything. So it has today's certificate, the feedback form, the link to the YouTube channel, and a link to sign up for next week's session if you haven't already. That will also be coming out in an email to you, probably on Thursday. So be looking for that email so that you can sign up and join us next week for part 2, where we're going to look at specific ed tech tools. Oh, I have a question about, so you can type your name. So when you access that form, you can type your name in that form. You should be able to. And then we'll fix the links. Thanks for letting us know. I will do that in just a moment. So with that, we're going to say thanks so much for joining us. We hope to see you back next week for part 2. And have a great week and happy back to school season.